Hello, welcome. I have a very special collection of books for you today. I felt like I had a collection of books in which I just had never heard anybody talk about. So I picked up that collection of books. You can see them right here. And I did research. I didn't find any videos specifically on YouTube about any of these books, and I just found very limited chatter about them. I think they are all beautiful books that deserve to be admired, and I also think that they are hidden gems for people that like certain types of genres and things. So I have a lot of options here. I have nonfiction, I have manga, I have, a fantasy series, poetry, a huge array of things. I'm really excited to show you these books and hopefully start this conversation about them. Okay, the first book that I have is Collective Amnesia by Koleka Patuma. This is a beautiful, amazing story collection that is, one, super accessible to anybody, even non-common poetry users. But two, Koleka Patuma is a woman from South Africa who recently won, prizes for the release of this poetry collection. And it marked a turning in literature, in South African literature, of the representation of women. Her poems very much show the life of a woman in South Africa. She really shows the divide between the familial self, the family self, and the personal self, and how the disconnect between those creates habitat for lack of healing. It creates a situation in which people, get stuck or lose their memories in collective amnesia because of the way that the societies are set up. Koleka Patuma is also queer, and the queer representation, the way that she describes being alienated as a queer person, is a very non-transcribable experience, in my opinion. But if anybody has done it before, it has been her. I think that her voice is amazing. Her poems, just every single page, just struck a chord with me. I just marked it all up. Seriously, one of the most amazing poetry collections I've ever read in my whole entire life. Please read this. This is a valuable lesson, uncommon perspective. I just think everybody needs to read this because her voice has such resonance. Next, we have Industrial Park by Patricia Galvao. So her husband, I can't remember his name, her husband was a prominent proletariat writer in Brazil during the communist movement down there in the 1930s. It's called Industrial Park because it is about a neighborhood and the industrialization of the neighborhood, changing from less industrialized jobs moving into factories, both, at all levels of society, but specifically at the women's perspective. Her husband was like a well-known writer, but her own personal writings were lost to time for a very long time. They've only recently been available to print. Just throughout her lifetime, she did a lot of, activism and progression for women's rights. In this specifically, she provides the women's perspective of what it meant from moving to taking care of the home into factories as women began to during the Industrial Revolution, and what that type of change caused in their communities and things like that. The prose in here, her writing is beautiful, but beyond that, the truth of women's perspective that she puts in here is unlike anything that I've read before. The woman's gaze, I guess you could say, that this book is written with is so refreshing a perspective on a time period, that's most often written by men. I didn't know any of this before I picked up this book. It was a random pickup, and I picked it up because of the pink on the cover, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I looked into it and was like, oh, that actually sounds very cool. I picked it up. Literally blew me away. It's a fictional novel, representative of the experiences of real people in Brazil around the 1930s, and I cannot recommend it enough because it is a perspective that is so unique in historical writing. It's super easy to consume as well. Like, it took me like 2 days to read it. It was phenomenal. Okay, this next one, please excuse me because I don't have them all. Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun. This is this is I guess you'd probably call it a slice of life manga. They did 1 season of it on Netflix, and I think that the season is amazing. It's very queer coded. All of the 6, there are 3 boys, 3 girls, the 6 main characters. They're all very queer coded. There's like a girl who feels more comfortable in a boy's uniform. There's, you know, men pondering their sexuality, like in a very gentle and funny and human way. Every single one of the characters is so lovable and enjoyable to read their perspective of. So as you go through time, like every joke is just like pure gold. They do a really good job with the slow burn joke, in that it will take pages and pages and pages for the joke to land, but then when it does, it's hysterical. I feel like I've never felt so much just pure joy from reading, especially a manga. I'm definitely more of a dramatic manga reader, you know, Full Metal Alchemist, Akira, the ones that are more intense, the slice of life and romance ones don't tend to be my cup of tea, but this one, it just captured my heart because every single character I was rooting for, every single character has like real growth throughout their time period that's like visible, and it's not even just like a bad person becoming good. It's like a person that is like this evolving to become a different person. It's so multifaceted and also just like absolutely adorable because everyone has just crushes on each other and just thinks the sweetest things about each other, and the interpersonal relationships and ponderances and love are just it's just so darling. I think I want to try and get all of them and just reread them all just because it's just so much pure joy. Like seriously, like within these pages, so many true and genuine laughs, and it's like not like it's not like weird comedy, it's not, you know, self-deprecating comedy. It's all just like in really good fun and healthy relationships. There's not like miscommunication tropes unless they're like small miscommunications. It's not like a driving factor in these characters' lives. It's just so beautiful. I just love it. It's just so good. It's good. In Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, a girl, Shio, has a crush on one of her classmates, and she finds out that he writes a romance manga and gets dragged into his romance manga lifestyle along with a couple of other classmates, and that kind of revolves around the plot in that he's like a secret romance writer under like a female alias, so people don't know that it's him, and it just creates wacky situations. I really recommend this, you know, for those lovers out there. This is for the lovers out there. Okay, next we have A Border Station by Shane Connaughton. This is a semi-autobiographical novel about a boy who grew up on the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, the Republic of Ireland. So in order to fully comprehend this, I had to do a little bit of research about the conflict there. But after doing that, it's such a well done portrayal of the struggles between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, the religious struggles, the political struggles, you know, the physical struggles, those, you know, issues with smuggling and things like that. It just does such a good job, not only at showing those things, but at showing those things from a child's perspective, because the child in this is like 10, and so he does not understand everything that's going on, so there's this filter that goes between what is happening and what the main character, the narrator, is understanding, and that gap in and of itself shows such it creates such a poignant point that the effect of, you know, cultural, political, border differences has on youth, on growth, on families, things like that. I really enjoyed it, even though it's a little like the focus on this on the boy, and his mom is not treated the best but I don't think that that's the focus of it, and it's semi-autobiographical too, so I don't know how much is real and how much is fiction. So like, I don't know, that there's kind of only so much that I can criticize about the interpersonal relationships in here, but I think that it really taught me a lot about a cultural history that I didn't fully understand, and I think that was a really valuable thing to read. I really enjoyed it, actually. Okay, this was a book that I picked up randomly from a bookstore for $6, not expecting anything from it, and it landed itself on my favorite shelf. That is Norma Jean Baker of Troy by Anne Carson. It's a tiny little book, almost nothing, but it is a poetry collection. Norma Jean Baker is the given name of Marilyn Monroe, and so it makes a comparison between Marilyn Monroe and Helen of Troy, the length to which men would go down to destroy things, and including the own self, that, you know, of this woman that they supposedly loved, the wars that people would fight for her. I read the autobiography of Red, and this is a billion times better, and I wish that this were as long as the autobiography of Red, because every morsel of this little poetry collection is so it's so real, especially reading it from a women's perspective. I just felt so deeply understood in many ways, many ways that I have often felt have been uncommunicatable. And so to feel heard and seen like that on that level, and not only that, to go beyond that and see women who have experienced even more levels of that type of objectification in the end. It's so impactful in its little tiny, like, what, 57 pages. It literally is just, it's just a hidden gem. It's a hidden gem. If you liked Autobiography of Red, you'll like this, but I also think this is readable to anyone, especially any woman, like, who just wants something to feel heard. This is Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. This is a novel. It's a philosophical allegory in the form of a novel. It's not really made to have like a plot, it's made to make a point. But the premise is that a man who has been searching for a teacher his whole life answers an ad in a newspaper for somebody looking for a student. He shows up and it is a talking gorilla. So it's like a ponderance on environmentalism and the perspective of animals have on the human world, and how humans have separated their concepts of themselves from the rest of the world, where the rest of the world does not do that. The rest of the world views itself as part of the world, whereas like humans have tried their hardest to separate themselves from that. It gets a lot deeper. It talks about a lot of complex ideas. It can be a little dense at times, but you just have to, it's just like not a like a light read, but it's not like an inaccessible read. It really is like a mind exercise, because it gets you to think about things in the ways that you don't normally think about them. And I love the format of the fictional story for things like that. I think it makes it way more consumable for me personally. So that is Ishmael. This has been on my favorite shelf for like 10 years. So this is a goodie that I have held on to for a very long time. And I know in my personal circles people know about it, but I don't hear people talk about it on booktube, whatever, you know. So there it is. Next, we have my favorite piece of philosophical literature that I personally read. Take that with a grain of salt, because I've not read a ton, but it is my favorite because it feels so, again, accessible. I think a lot of times beginner books about things become favorites because they're the things that make the change. They're the things that introduce you to new concepts that then thereon change your life from that point. So I think that's why a lot of these books are, you know, accessible to me, because they were books that made changes in my life. This is Existentialism is a Humanism by Jean-Paul Sartre. And this is actually a transcript of a speech that Jean-Paul Sartre gave to a college after his book Being and Nothingness was released. This man, he's a French philosopher who was one of the main perpetuators of existentialism, which is that we exist to create our own purpose, to create our own reality. He had this book, Being in Nothingness, like 1,300 pages of just dense philosophical talk, and so in the end, a lot of people ended up misunderstanding his points. So he came and he did this talk to try and explain the most basics of his concept of existentialism to the French population, and I think that he does a great job condensing it down. It's just, every line hits. The conclusions that he draws are this, like, the most basic, bare bones understanding of existentialism as a concept, which I actually enjoy existentialism as a concept. I think that it is a tool that can be used to battle nihilism. So I really recommend this one as a philosophical doorstop for anybody, because I think nihilism has very much run rampant in the universe lately, and I think it's important to combat things like that. So here is this beautiful philosophical read that's very short. Even if you commit to it, it's very short, and this is actually his speech, and then halfway through it's another essay that he writes, so it's actually only half of the book that you have to read to get into this. So very much recommend. All right, now we're getting to the one that I know you all have been waiting for. This is a fantasy. I think I finished this fantasy maybe like 2 years ago. And even still, within those 2 years, I've never heard anybody talk about it. I even look for it on people's bookshelves when people show their bookshelves, and I've never seen it sitting on anybody's bookshelves. So I'm just trying to put people on. If you're a person who hates books about books, then you can ignore this, because that's exactly what the whole series is kind of based on. This is The Reader. The Reader. The second one, which is The Speaker, and the third one, which is The Storyteller. So basically, this is a world in which written language does not exist, and has never existed, if you catch my drift. Then our main character finds a book, and it devolves. It's in a very pirate heavy world, and there's so many kinds of representation in here. Like, I swear, there's just, like, you know, pirates, like you would expect all different kinds of people to become pirates, and that's what it is. There are so many different kinds of people represented in these pages that it's so crazy. Like, this is what real representation and real diversity in your characters looks like. Miss Tracy Chi did a good job, really amazing job, in all honesty, not only creating a world that is believable and is accurate to ours, but in creating a fantastical world that involves, you know, magic and political intrigue and things like that, involving the written word. There's a meta layer to this series that doesn't really hit unless you get to the third one, obviously, because, like, that's the point. It's the full story. It's the full story. And, oh man, I have never gotten to talk to anybody about this because nobody has ever read them, but they, like, it just gets to me. I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed at the end of the last book, because the small, tiny details, the hints that didn't matter, that had been thrown in throughout the entire series, that culminated in the end, it literally, one of my favorite series that I've ever read in my whole life, and I've never seen anybody talk about it. So this was actually the thing that inspired this video idea, because I need to know, like, the point of me talking about these books is so that I can find people that have read these books and I can talk to them about them. I need to know if you have read these, and I need to know your opinion on them because I fell in love. So I am in the market for something, another life-changing fantasy series like this. The thing is, I'm really picky about my fantasy series. So read this. Read these. Read The Reader. Read The Reader by Tracy Chee. It is, I cannot recommend it enough. Very last one. And it's another nonfiction. I'm sorry, I'm in my nonfiction era, so if the nonfictions aren't your thing, I mean, I had the manga and I had the fantasy read, so, you know, I had the variety, but yeah, I am a nonfiction girly, so that is where a lot of my recommendations come from. This is super valuable, especially if you are a raver or if you enjoy electronic dance music. This is Bass, Mids, and Tops, an oral history of sound system culture. This is a collection of interviews from the original sound speaker culture creators, the original mostly black men, but also black women, communicates how the sound system culture created by the Jamaican population in the UK began the journey that turned into what you know, rave scenes as we know it became. This is the origin story, and every single interview has such a unique perspective. The interviewer is Joe Muggs, a famous Rolling Stones music reporter. It has like 25 interviews in here. It's massive. I haven't even finished it yet. I've gotten to about there, but it feels like every interview gave me years of information to think about. Hearing it, and it's just like such an accurate, you know, it's like a first-hand record. It's when in history class they tell you that the best source is a first-hand source or whatever. This is the best source. This is the people that were there, the people that created sound systems as an idea that evolved the progression of the music from you know, actual instrumental sounds to synthetic and faking sounds, and the repetition and all of those bits and, you know, little branches that grew to become the electronic music culture. It's so important for people to understand the origins of it, especially because it is rooted completely in, you know, a black origin. And so to understand those perspectives, understand the people that were hanging around in those areas, where they came from, is such an important thing to do. And I enjoyed reading the things on top of that, because you know, these guys were partiers and they have crazy stories and they have you know, their own experiences. I know there's the last interview that I wrote, Rob Smith, he talks about how he saw the change of music from going from, you know, guitars and drums and things like that to going to synths and all of those things that create the artificial music. And he talks about how now he's seeing a shift where the opposite is happening, wherein everybody starts off with the synthetic artificial music and grows the talent and skill to do the guitar, the drums, and things like that. And his perspective on it is so interesting. I just think that the words in here are super valuable. Majority of them are men, but I kind of get that that was who was allowed into the space at the time. I think that there are other resources that focus on the women of this period a lot more. This is 90% men, so don't go into thinking that it's all 100% perfect. It is really good though. The interview questions are so well done. Everyone is so well researched. You can tell why Joe Muggs is a critically acclaimed music journalist, because he does a really good job knowing his people and looking into them. Hi everybody! Just now, after getting to the end of my edit, I just realized that I didn't do an outro. So thanks for hanging out. Thanks for checking out these recommendations. If you have read any of them, I'd love to hear and chat with you about them, because these are ones that I definitely have never heard people talk about. So I'd love to chat. Thanks for watching, and